Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller TV series named Tales of the Bizarre, Season 3, Part 3. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The 31st story begins with Keisuke being no stranger to business trips. Compared to previous assignments, he felt this one was relatively easy, just delivering a document to the headquarters. While not the most modern method, Keisuke was still proud to be a member of the Nambu Group. He was currently in Nambu City, a metropolis that existed solely for the Nambu Group. Subsidiaries of the corporation spanned every industry, and nearly all these affiliated companies were located within the city. Consequently, everything and everyone in the city bore the Nambu insignia. The Nambu Group's head office was a super tall 85-story skyscraper known as the Nambu Building, soaring into the clouds like a pillar piercing the heavens. Keisuke's destination today was this very headquarters. Arriving for the first time, Keisuke was astounded by the massive crowds. The lobby resembled an international airport terminal, bustling with activity. Employees from the group's subsidiaries across the country were packed in front of every counter. He marveled that this was indeed the Nambu Group headquarters. When he reached the front desk, Keisuke explained he was there to deliver documents. The receptionist asked him for various forms of identification. Keisuke was dumbfounded. He was just dropping off a file. Why was it so complicated? The receptionist replied that it was just standard procedure and insisted on his cooperation. She then handed him a document delivery application form, instructing him to fill it out and take it to the Nambu Industries office to get it stamped. Keisuke was confused. He was delivering a file to Nambu Corporation, so why did he need to go to Nambu Industries? The woman simply told him to follow the instructions and, perhaps fearing he would get lost, kindly gave him a map. Following the map's directions, Keisuke arrived at a rather remote part of the city where Nambu Industries was located. After climbing several flights of stairs and pushing open an old door, he entered the office. Inside were two desks, occupied by a young woman and an old man. The old man took the application, casually tossed it aside, and told Keisuke to come back in 3 days. Though puzzled, Keisuke prepared to comply. Just as he was about to leave, the old man called out, asking if he had arranged for accommodation. Keisuke explained he thought it would only take a day and planned to stay at a business hotel. The old man told him that a hotel would cost money and he should stay in the company dormitory, adding that the main reception desk would handle the arrangements for him. Upon hearing about the dormitory, the woman at the other desk began typing rapidly on her keyboard, seemingly arranging something. After leaving Nambu Industries, Keisuke called his own office, explaining that he might need to wait for a few days. His company acknowledged this, stating that it was a very important document and was expected to take a long time. Back at the Nambu headquarters, Keisuke asked about the dormitory. The receptionist told him they were all full, but after a search, she found one vacant room. Following her directions, Keisuke arrived at the Nambu Group's dormitory center. But when he opened the door, he was shocked to find someone already there, the young woman from the Nambu Industries office. Keisuke quickly apologized and was about to go back to the front desk to clarify the situation, but the woman stopped him. She explained that the last shift had ended for the night, so there were likely no other empty rooms. And so Keisuke stayed. In the middle of the night, the woman slipped into his bed for a 2-minute hormone yoga session. The next morning, Keisuke woke up with an aching back after a tumultuous night. 3 days later, Keisuke returned to pick up his application, only to find that the manager had been replaced. The new manager informed him it would take another week, so Keisuke stayed for another week, spending it intimately with the woman. A week later, his application was finally processed. He needed to take it back to the main reception desk, but upon arrival, he was told it now required the seal of the Nambu Industrial Finance Department's director. On that very day, a major personnel reshuffle occurred within the Nambu Group. Everyone was transferred from their previous positions. So when Keisuke returned to the front desk, the new receptionist demanded he present all his identification documents again. After that, Keisuke resumed his endless running around between various departments in Nambu City. He couldn't understand why such an important document was entrusted to a low-level employee like him. But the minds of the higher-ups were hard to fathom, so he could only obey. After running around for a month, he suddenly received a package from the head office. Inside was a fax machine. The woman was thrilled, remarking that the head office rarely sent such things to low-level employees. When they turned it on, they received their first instruction: stay at home, as all future directives would be sent via the fax machine. This meant Keisuke no longer had to run around. His job was now to simply wait for orders. And so, Keisuke waited for many years. His once young wife was now gray-haired. Their son had graduated and was about to start his career, having been hired by Nambu Steel. His mother urged him to share the good news with his father. But when they entered Keisuke's room, they found he had been dead for some time. Just then, the fax machine whirred to life. Keisuke's son picked up the message and saw that the document his father had submitted all those years ago had finally been approved by the chairman. Headquarters was now instructing Keisuke to report to the General Affairs Office on the 36th floor immediately. The woman remarked that their long wait had not been in vain. The story ends here. In a way, Keisuke's life came to a perfect conclusion. He finally completed his work right before he died. Although the ending is ironic, he had at least successfully integrated his son into the fabric of Nambu City. The 32nd story begins on a scorching summer noon when the air conditioner in a restaurant was broken. Even so, this couldn't deter loyal customers from coming for their noodles, though they occasionally grumbled about the heat. Just then, a man in a full suit walked in. He sat down, glanced at the menu on the wall, and ordered a meal. A moment later, his meal arrived and he began to eat with gusto. At the table in front of him sat a mother and son. The son was complaining incessantly, saying his friend's family had gone to Hawaii to escape the heat while they were stuck at home. His mother, annoyed, told him to be quiet. At the next table, a man was engrossed in a baseball game on the radio, while next to him, a young man was smiling as he read a manga. The suited man ordered a second meal. The owner's wife hesitated for a moment but quickly brought it to him. He continued to devour his food. The baseball fan's team seemed to be doing poorly, causing him to grumble constantly. The young man next to him paid no mind, lost in his manga world. The mother asked the owner's wife for a glass of water. Soon, the suited man caught the boy's attention. He watched as the man quickly finished his egg bowl and ordered a stamina bowl. The owner's wife expressed doubt that he could eat anymore, but he insisted, so she reluctantly had her husband prepare it. The boy looked at the man, then back at the menu, and seemed to realize something. This was his fourth dish. Everyone was a little surprised at how much he could eat. The scene made the baseball fan forget his game, the young man forget his manga, and the mother forget to scold her child. Even the owner couldn't resist peeking out to see what this incredible eater looked like. The baseball fan was so captivated by the man's ferocious eating that he gulped. The young man put down his manga and took out a notebook. The mother and son had been frozen in the same position for a long time. They watched as the suited man neatly placed his chopsticks down, looked at the menu again, and ordered another dish. Sometime later, during the sleepy afternoon, another customer arrived. An old man wanted some pork kidneys for a health boost, but the baseball fan stopped him, explaining that now was not the time for that. He pointed out that the man in the suit was already on his 10th dish, having ordered them sequentially from the top of the menu. The old man looked at the dishes the man had ordered and was stunned. He joked that at this rate, the man's stomach could probably hold him. The man ordered his next dish, the owner cooked, and the old man called for more people. Soon, everyone from the surrounding streets had crowded into the restaurant. They had heard about a big eater and wanted to see him for themselves. In that short time, the man had already finished 3 more dishes. Watching him wolf down his food, someone couldn't resist pulling out money to bet that he wouldn't be able to finish the 17th dish. In the kitchen, the owner's wife tenderly wiped the sweat from her husband's brow, her eyes filled with admiration. Soon, the man finished the ramen. The man who made the bet lost all his pocket money. Gradually, more and more people gathered, attracting the attention of a patrolling police officer. The crowd was noisy and boisterous, which annoyed the baseball fan, who worried the commotion would ruin the man's appetite. To get the newcomers up to speed, he had the young man give them a brief explanation. Just then, the man finished the 18th dish, fried noodles. Everyone watched as he tightened his tie and fastened a button, thinking he was finally full. But instead, he immediately ordered the 19th dish, fried rice. At this point, only 2 dishes remained on the menu. Just then, someone knocked over their chopsticks, startling the man and causing him to pause. Fortunately, a woman nearby quickly handed him a glass of water. After drinking it, the man resumed his cheerful eating, and everyone in the room let out a collective sigh of relief. This was a critical moment. Even the owner was on standby, ready to cook. When the man finished the fried rice and put down his spoon, only 1 dish was left. The owner's wife urged her husband to start cooking, but he calmly replied that he would wait until the order was placed. The man requested the next dish. The owner's spirit ignited as he lit the stove. His wife filled a plate with rice. As the curry bubbled, the owner gently ladled it over the rice, creating a delicious plate of curry rice. When it was placed in front of him, the man actually swallowed his saliva. Then, he eagerly picked up his spoon and began to eat voraciously. But after one bite, he suddenly stopped and remarked that it was delicious. Then, spurred on by the cheers of the crowd, he polished off the entire plate in a few quick bites, even remembering to wipe his mouth elegantly afterward. The crowd erupted in cheers. The baseball fan had already gone to the kitchen to congratulate the owner. The owner then approached the man, deeply moved, and expressed that he had never been so happy. His sincere words were so touching that they brought tears to the eyes of a few emotional onlookers. Perhaps moved by the owner's words, the man, who had been stone-faced the entire time, finally gave the owner a strange smile. But a moment later, he returned to normal, put on his glasses, and looked at the menu on the wall again. He announced that he hadn't eaten yet and was ready to start a new round of ordering, leaving everyone in shock. The 33rd story begins with Amy, who was currently packing up her ex-boyfriend's belongings, preparing to throw them all in the trash. Although they were once deeply in love, and he had given her many things she treasured, the moment he brought another girl home, their relationship was over. While on the phone with her best friend, Emmy recounted everything. Her friend suggested she get a haircut, quoting the old saying about starting fresh. Since ancient times, hair has been considered a woman's most prized possession. To cut something so important requires a reason, such as wanting a change of mood or image, or getting over a breakup and wanting a fresh start. But Amy had grown her dark, beautiful hair for a long time and was reluctant to cut it. As she was lost in thought, she received a coupon for a heartbreak salon, which offered an 80% discount for those who want to forget the past. After some consideration, Amy decided to go. She told the stylist to cut it all off, insisting she wouldn't regret it. The moment she made her decision, she was suddenly strapped into the chair with a safety belt. Before she could understand what was happening, she noticed that many other customers were wearing breathing masks. Even more terrifying, the stylists were holding surgical tools, and a cart filled with syringes, scissors, and disinfectant was being wheeled towards her. Finally, Amy couldn't help but ask the stylist what they were doing. The stylist replied that they were administering anesthesia, but reassured her that their technique was world-class and the process would be completely safe and painless. Amy was furious, asking why she needed anesthesia for a haircut. The stylist seemed to understand her thought process, guessing she didn't want it. So he picked up the scissors and began to cut. Amy screamed in pain. As her hair fell to the floor, it bled profusely. With each snip of the scissors, her chicken screams echoed through the salon. Meanwhile, Amy's ex-boyfriend was in bed with another woman. A sudden scream made him stop. The woman in bed then noticed long hairs all over his apartment. Assuming he hadn't completely broken up with Emmy, she became enraged and left, ignoring his explanations. The man didn't know what to do. The next day, he bought the woman her favorite bracelet as an apology. After they made up, they prepared to enjoy a delicious soup, but there was a long hair in it. There was also a long hair on the man's clothes. Accusing him of still being with his ex and treating her like a fool, the woman stormed out again, leaving the man completely baffled. Back with Amy, her friend came to visit, complimenting her new short hair and saying it looked beautiful. She added that Amy had now completely severed ties with her ex-boyfriend's past. But when her friend mentioned his name, Amy had no idea who she was talking about. Her clever friend assumed Amy simply didn't want to talk about him anymore, so she dropped the subject. However, Amy now gave her friend a strange feeling. It seemed that when her hairstyle changed, her personality had changed as well. At the same time, the ex-boyfriend was looking through an album of his ex-girlfriends. Each photo represented a past relationship. As he looked at Amy's picture, the bathtub overflowed. He casually tossed the photo aside to take a bath. While soaking, he fell asleep and had a dream where he and Amy were chasing each other. But when he tried to grab her hand, he pulled out a clump of her hair. The hair then began to suffocate him. After escaping the bathroom, he looked at the photo again and discovered that the Amy in the picture now had short hair. He couldn't understand why. The next day, he went to Amy's apartment to ask her about it. When she opened the door, she didn't recognize him. Amy was on her way to work and didn't want to deal with him, but he pleaded, saying he was there to apologize. In the confusion, he accidentally fell down the stairs, suffering a serious injury and falling unconscious. It was Amy who called an ambulance and sent him to the hospital. His life was not in danger, but he had lost his memory due to the head injury. Now, neither of them recognized the other. They introduced themselves. During their conversation, a hairpin in Amy's hair caught the man's attention, and this seemed to be the beginning of another unfortunate cycle. He asked if they had met somewhere before. Amy smiled. The story ends here, with the hope that this time, the two of them might have a better outcome. The 34th story begins with Nakaya being a highly educated professor, learned, knowledgeable, and virtuous, a true talent. A man like him was strict with both himself and others. He had a daughter whom he had raised well. She was well-mannered and cultured. Nakaya was very proud of her, feeling he had done right by his late wife. All that was left was to find a son-in-law as outstanding as she was, and then he could peacefully join his wife in the afterlife. The conversation turned somber, so his daughter got up and left. The next morning, Nakaya was awakened not by his alarm clock, but by a morning news program filled with profanity. Baffled, he changed the channel, only to find the same thing. He had no idea what was happening. He got up, washed, and prepared for work. But just as he stepped outside, someone called him an old geezer. At first, Nakaya thought they were talking to someone else, but when he turned around, he saw they were addressing him. A woman told him he had just woken up and should watch out not to trip and fall flat on his face, then told him to get lost with his smelly butt. Curiously, after cursing at him, she gave him a polite bow. Out on the street, an old man rudely asked a police officer for directions. Nakaya braced himself for a confrontation, but was surprised when the officer actually gave the man directions, though he too spoke with a stream of profanity. At the train platform, a safety officer yelled for the good-for-nothings on the platform to get behind the safety line. After a moment of thought, Nakaya seemed to understand something. He went to his research lab to find his mentor. He noticed his mentor was behaving normally, not spouting obscenities. He recounted everything he had seen and heard. The old professor listened and then smiled calmly. He explained that he was somewhat responsible. They had recently cultivated a type of bacteria, a project Nakaya had also participated in. The previous night, the professor had accidentally broken the vial containing it. The bacteria was harmless to animals but affected the language center of the human brain, causing speech to become coarse. Overnight, the world had seemingly become foul-mouthed. As for why the two of them weren't infected, the professor guessed their continuous involvement in its cultivation had given them immunity. He chuckled, adding that the bacteria posed no threat to life, so there was no need to worry. Nakaya was frantic, urging his mentor to develop a vaccine quickly before the world descended into chaos. Annoyed by his mentor's casual attitude, Nakaya decided to start researching a vaccine himself immediately. But upon hearing this, his mentor seemed to get angry. He stood before Nakaya and questioned him, reminding him that his daughter had a matchmaking meeting that day. Realizing this, Nakaya immediately left the lab. He decided to buy a new tie first. But when he arrived at the store, he accidentally used polite language with the clerk. He saw the clerk's terrified expression, the strange looks from other customers, and the manager rushing over to handle the situation. Nakaya seemed to understand. The world's language had been completely inverted. Profanity was now praise, and polite language was an insult. If a vaccine wasn't developed soon, would he have to speak in profanities forever? Nakaya dreaded the thought, but was helpless for now. Lost in thought, he accidentally bumped into a group of thugs. A curious scene unfolded. The thugs were furious and cursed at him viciously, but it sounded like they were being incredibly polite. After escaping the thugs, he finally made it to his daughter's matchmaking meeting on time. However, the language everyone used during the conversation made him uncomfortable. Seeing his once gentle and refined daughter spewing vulgarities, Nakaya's defenses crumbled. Even more terrifying, both families were very pleased with each other. All that remained was for Nakaya, who had been silent for the last week, to give his concluding remarks. But what could he say? Using polite language was out of the question, but he wasn't good at swearing. However, thinking of his daughter's future happiness, Nakaya decided to try. He managed to say that his ugly hag of a daughter seemed quite satisfied, and that their idiot son was a remarkable fellow. After speaking, Nakaya gasped for breath, but he saw that the room had fallen silent. He was confused, worrying that he might say the wrong thing. To his surprise, the other father told him he couldn't believe a blockhead like him could say that so beautifully. The 35th story begins with the same two brothers with psychic powers coming back for a limited time. After the incident at the bar, they spent a long time practicing at the research institute and finally managed to gain some control over their minds and abilities, allowing them to go out again. This time it was daytime, and the brothers chose a coffee shop, thinking they wouldn't run into any thugs and could have a pleasant day. However, when the younger brother accidentally touched the waitress's hand, he saw flashes of her painful past. When he tried to drink his coffee, something strange happened. The cup, once full of coffee, was now filled with coffee beans, and his iced drink began to boil like water. The younger brother also sensed a faint, malicious presence nearby. They realized a powerful psychic was toying with them again, but they couldn't figure out who or where this person was. After a moment, the person revealed himself. He had a face that screamed, "Villain." He told the younger brother it was a shame, as he would probably never find a girlfriend. Any physical contact would mean she had no secrets from him. He remarked that it had been a long time since they had been out and suggested they join him. That way they wouldn't have to worry about food or drink, and there would be plenty of sexy ladies. The brothers immediately refused. The man clearly looked shady and probably had some serious issues. The man wasn't angry about being rejected. He understood the brothers' nature. They were good people, and good people were the easiest to morally blackmail. He didn't need to attack the brothers directly. He just had to target the ordinary people in the coffee shop. The next moment, the four women behind the younger brother burst into uncontrollable laughter. The older brother, unable to stand it, shouted for him to stop. In response, the woman in white was slapped hard across the face. Enraged, the older brother again commanded the man to stop. The next moment, the woman in purple jumped on top of the woman in white and began beating her relentlessly. For some reason, the woman in white was always the one getting hurt. The kind-hearted older brother couldn't take it anymore and asked the man what he had to do to make him stop. The man told them to start a cult with him and to stop doing such meaningless things as if they were inferior. Hearing the man talk about creating a cult, the older brother realized he didn't just have issues, he was seriously disturbed. He once again flatly refused. This time, the man was furious and used his telekinesis to blast the older brother back. Seeing his brother injured, the younger brother stepped forward. It turned out he didn't just have telepathy, he also had a bit of precognitive ability. He told the man that he had seen his future. The man was intrigued, as he did want to know what his future held. But the younger brother's next words made him practically spit blood. The younger brother said the man had no future. It was a void of darkness. Enraged, the man lunged at the younger brother with a dinner knife, injuring him. Seeing this, the older brother didn't hesitate and attacked with his telekinesis. Perhaps due to his injury, the man's power was now greatly diminished. He only managed to hold on for a short while before being defeated by the combined efforts of the two brothers. With the man's demise, everyone in the coffee shop returned to normal, except for the woman in purple, who was exhausted, and the woman in white, who was unconscious. The two brothers took advantage of the chaos and quickly left. Outside, they praised each other. The older brother said the younger had become brave and reliable, while the younger brother said it was all thanks to him. Chatting, they headed back to the mental institute, muttering that after this incident, the institute probably wouldn't let them out for a while. The 36th story begins on a dark night when a car sped down the road carrying two people, the driver and the president of a textile company. The president was distraught because his textile company was on the verge of collapse. While talking to the driver, he noticed a toy on the passenger seat. It was something the driver had bought for his son, the latest product from his friend's toy store. Mentioning the toy robot reminded the driver of his friend's words, that this product would definitely be a bestseller and revive his struggling company. Perhaps because his own company was facing bankruptcy, the president reacted strongly to the words, "revive." He accidentally pressed a switch on the robot. The next moment, red and blue lights flashed, and a siren-like sound blared. The noise gave the president a headache, but he couldn't find the off switch. The driver pulled the car over to help him turn it off. In their frantic efforts, neither of them noticed that they had inadvertently saved a strange man in a cloak who was being pursued by a group of armed men. The next day, the textile company held a meeting to figure out its last resort. One of the executives proposed that merging with another company would be the most suitable option. However, not everyone agreed. If they merged, the textile company would cease to exist. Just then, they thought of someone, a legendary figure who had reportedly saved over 100 companies worldwide from ruin. This news was like a lifeline for the president. They moved quickly to invite this rumored expert. But if he was a legend, where could they find him? They placed an ad in the newspaper claiming the man's mother was critically ill. But after 2 days, there was no response. Just as the president was losing hope, the man showed up in person. It was none other than the cloaked man they had unintentionally saved. Without that connection, he probably wouldn't have come. But upon his arrival, he set several conditions. He agreed to help the company, but he had strict rules. First, no one was to stand behind him, or he would act without mercy. Everyone was stunned. This man was truly different. Next, he demanded a windowless room, the company's account books for the past 5 years, and the last 6 months of the Japan-US Economic Daily. Furthermore, a specific fish tank had to be moved into his room, and absolutely no one was to enter his room without permission. The president agreed to all his demands. The usual trope is that the stranger the person, the greater their ability. They would find out in a few days whether he was all talk or the real deal. On the day the man moved in, he instructed the company to issue a press release about a special new fiber. Although the company was skeptical, they complied. The result was beyond everyone's expectations. As soon as the announcement was made, investors flocked to buy the company's stock. In just a few days, the company was on the path to recovery. This made the executive who proposed the merger anxious. If the company recovered, the merger with another company wouldn't happen, and the promises its president had made to him would be void. He immediately met with its president to try and salvage the situation. Back at the company, he called over a young secretary he had placed by the president's side, gave her an extra bonus, and ordered her to eliminate the strange man that night. Having been supported for so long for this purpose, the young woman had no reason to refuse. Meanwhile, the man seemed to have anticipated this. That evening, he asked the textile company for a red belt, claiming it was a matter of life and death. After the driver gave it to him, he grew uneasy. He wondered if the man, feeling he couldn't succeed, was planning to take his own life. He rushed back to the company, but the secretary was faster. As she opened the door and stepped into the room, the driver, who had just reached the stairwell, heard a scream. When he got to the hallway, he saw the unconscious secretary. In a panic, he too burst into the room and saw a shocking sight. What he saw was neither man nor demon. This was likely the reason he forbade anyone from entering his room. The 37th story begins with Shota as a member of a gang, knowing that getting a dragon or a tiger tattooed on his back was a necessity. However, since he had just joined and was short on cash, he couldn't afford it. The tattoo artist refused to work for free, so Shota proposed paying in installments, but was rejected again. Just then, an old, withered hand touched Shota's back. Startled, Shota jumped up against the wall. The tattoo artist immediately held Shota down, allowing the old man to admire his entire back without interruption. After examining it, the old man told the tattoo artist that he wanted to do the tattoo himself. The tattoo artist was surprised. Before he could say anything, Shota protested, asking if this old man was going to be the one tattooing him. The tattoo artist slapped him and told him to show some respect. It turned out the old man was one of the titans of the tattoo world, a legendary master known as the Dream Genius. Shota had truly failed to recognize someone of such stature. The master explained that he had been searching for a canvas like Shota's for a long time. Now that he had found it, his hands were itching to work. He offered to tattoo Shota for free, but in exchange, the design would be entirely his choice. The next day, Shota went to his gang's hideout to show off his tattoo, but his fellow members burst out laughing, suggesting the tattoo master must be senile. Furious, Shota threatened to go after the old man, but his friends stopped him. Although they didn't know the old man, the tattoo artist he was with was highly respected in their circle. In short, Shota couldn't afford to mess with them. With no other choice, Shota had to swallow his pride. He then came up with a plan. He would sunbathe until his back peeled, hoping to fade the tattoo. While he was sunbathing, a foreigner spotted the tattoo on his back. The foreigner chattered away in a language Shota didn't understand, and then led him in front of a group of reporters who took his picture. Only then did Shota realize the foreigner was a big deal, another master in the tattoo world. He had given the tattoo on Shota's back the highest praise, declaring that his own work was garbage in comparison. He urged everyone to protect this masterpiece, as it would fade with age and this perfect art would be lost forever. And so Shota became famous because of the tattoo he had once despised. After the tattoo gained fame, the media flocked to interview the old master, only to find he had passed away several days prior. Consequently, the tattoo on Shota's back became the old master's final work and was declared a national treasure. The government sent people to protect the tattoo, and by extension, Shota. Furthermore, if Shota did anything that could damage the tattoo, he would face legal punishment. Shota was unhappy to hear this, but escape was impossible. He was told that since he hadn't paid the old master for the tattoo, he didn't own the rights to the artwork. It should have been preserved in a museum, but out of respect for his human rights, it was specially entrusted to his care. At first, Shota kind of enjoyed the feeling of being followed and protected by a group of people. Gang members like him had many enemies, but now, with the government's protection, he had nothing to worry about. But soon he discovered the downside. These people followed him to the gang's hideout every day, which affected their business and angered the gang leader. Shota was forced to take a leave of absence. Back at home, after a shower, just as he was about to get intimate with his girlfriend, the group burst in. His girlfriend's nail had accidentally scratched the tattoo. They took his girlfriend away. Enraged, Shota escaped their protection, triggering a citywide manhunt. The government issued a warrant for his arrest. Anyone who could capture him or provide information on his whereabouts would receive a huge reward. The entire city went crazy. People who spotted Shota chased after him, while posters of him were plastered all over the streets. Those who caught up to him were afraid to touch him, fearing they might damage the tattoo on his back. So for the time being, they couldn't take any drastic action, which allowed Shota to escape their sight again. When Shota hid in an abandoned parking garage and tried to burn the tattoo off his back, more people appeared from nowhere, surrounding him and stopping him. After that, Shota was taken to a museum. The 38th story begins with a man who went to his rival's home and, in a moment of carelessness, killed him. Afterwards, the man told himself to stay calm. The incident had happened, and now he had to devise a brilliant, flawless plan to clear himself of suspicion. The first step was to eliminate any hair and fingerprints. The second was to take off his coat and change into women's clothing. He thought that even if someone saw him, it wouldn't matter, as he would look completely different. Just as the cross-dressing man was about to leave, the doorbell rang. The sound made him jump. He tiptoed to the door and saw it was a newspaper salesman. He was furious. If someone got a clear look at his face, his disguise wouldn't matter much. He grew more and more agitated and scared. While he was fretting, the person outside, getting no response, reluctantly left. After he was gone, the man breathed a heavy sigh of relief, thinking it was a close call. He walked back into the room, first mocking his dead rival, then taking out a cigarette. But thinking about the consequences of smoking, he quickly put it away. He couldn't leave any trace. Just then, the phone rang. This sent another jolt of panic through him. The phone was set to an answering machine. The man heard his rival's girlfriend leaving a message, saying she was off work and would arrive around 9:15. Looking at the time, he realized he only had about 12 or 13 minutes to get out. With that in mind, he put on a wig and prepared to leave again. Then the doorbell rang. It was a delivery person, but he seemed to have the wrong address. Unaware of his mistake, he kept knocking loudly, the sound grating on his nerves. Although he wanted to tell the delivery man he had the wrong place, he didn't dare speak, afraid the man would remember his voice. Fortunately, after a few minutes, the delivery man finally realized his mistake, changed his tune, and quickly left. Because of the 2-minute delay, the man now only had 10 minutes. He rushed back to the living room and put on the wig for a third time. But just as he was about to leave, the power went out. The sudden darkness, combined with his poor eyesight, made him fumble with his bag. It spilled open. Now the man couldn't leave. He was worried he had left something behind and knelt on the floor, frantically feeling around. Leaving even one personal item would be a disaster, but he couldn't find anything. After a moment, the power came back on. The man saw that nothing had fallen out. It was all in his head. This time, he was really, truly going to leave. He turned and walked towards the door without a second thought. But when he opened it, he saw the police. The man panicked again, wondering why there were police here. In his despair, he overheard the conversation. It turned out the delivery man had gotten into a fight with a resident, and they were still arguing in front of the police. The man calmed himself down, then became anxious again. Although it had nothing to do with him, he couldn't leave. He couldn't let the police see him like this. And time was running out. It was almost 9:15. What would he do when his rival's girlfriend arrived? The man paced frantically in the living room. After a long time, the police finally finished and left. The man once again prepared to open the door and leave, but he heard the sound of a key in the lock from outside. He looked out and saw a woman, which sent him into another panic. The good news was, this woman wasn't his rival's girlfriend. The bad news was, she announced she was going to wait by the door until he came out. The man felt he was completely doomed. His meticulously planned scheme was ruined. A moment later, his rival's actual girlfriend arrived. She saw the other woman outside and they started arguing. The man used this time to hide with the body on the balcony. He watched the two women argue their way from outside into the apartment. Their endless bickering drove him mad. His perfect plan was completely finished. But then, a thought struck him. Killing one is a crime. Killing two is the same crime. He decided to kill both women. But as he walked out with a board in his hand, the power went out again. Then, the man's scream was heard. When the lights came back on, the two men's bodies were being carried out of the apartment. When questioned by the police, the two women said they had no idea who the cross-dressing man was. They just saw the lights come on and found him lying dead like a piece of shit there. The police suspected he was just a cross-dresser and had a sex relationship with the house owner before they commit suicides. The story ends here. It turns out the man's death was the true perfect plan. Not only did he eliminate his rival and evade police suspicion, but he also ruined his rival's reputation after death. The 39th story begins with reporters swarming the front of the Tokyo Supreme Court, where the final verdict for a shocking robbery and murder case from 5 years ago was about to be delivered. In the first trial, the defendant was sentenced to death as requested by the prosecution. However, due to a lack of crucial evidence from the defense attorney and suspicions that the confession was coerced, the defendant appealed and secured a not guilty verdict. Now, 5 years later, the judge announced the final verdict. The defendant was acquitted. Everyone in the courtroom was stunned. The judge was filled with shame and anger, yet seemed powerless. As a symbol and guardian of justice, he failed to uphold it. The defendant, Sato, walked out of the courthouse and was immediately mobbed by reporters. He ignored their probing questions, simply stating that he had received the most just judgment and therefore no one had the right to criticize him. With that, he pushed through the reporters and tried to hail a taxi. But it seemed even the taxi drivers found him repulsive and none would stop. As Sato was cursing, a large truck sped towards him. Sato was knocked to the side and the truck continued on without stopping. The unconscious Sato found himself in a pitch-black place. He didn't know where he was or what had happened to him. As he wondered, a voice echoed in his ears, telling him he was a man heavy with sin and would face divine punishment. Sato laughed, disbelieving that he would face God's judgment after just being acquitted. Sato's disrespect, curses, and mockery angered the divine being. So it was decided that Sato would suffer a punishment more painful than death. Sato was clearly defiant, but before he could process it, he was plunged into darkness again. When Sato came to, he found himself driving a car on a highway. Though he didn't understand what was happening and thought he was dreaming, he pinched himself and felt pain. Pain meant it wasn't a dream. Since it wasn't a dream, he forgot all about the divine being and focused on driving. But he soon realized something was wrong. The car could only accelerate, not slow down, and they were going downhill. The car's speed increased rapidly. This terrified Sato. He tried to pull the handbrake, but with a hard tug it came off in his hand. The car then went completely out of control and plunged off a cliff. The half-dead Sato was furious. He had just been acquitted, and now he was going to die? But he didn't die. He found himself inexplicably in a coffin surrounded by flowers, being pushed into a crematorium furnace. He tried to call for help, but no one could hear his cries. Sato was burned until his body sizzled. The pain caused him to pass out. When he woke up again, he was hanging upside down. Several large men stood beside him, and in front of him was a cement mixer, churning out concrete. It seemed they were planning to encase him. He was then thrown in. When he woke up again, the scene had changed. It looked like a battlefield from the Warring States period. Sato was wounded, leaning against a tree. He saw a group of men approaching, leaving no survivors in their wake, finishing off everyone with another blow. Terrified, Sato tried to run but was easily caught and beaten to death. Next, Sato found himself in the World War II era, tied to a cross, being judged by several foreigners. He had had enough of this. He didn't want to die again. He screamed, begging for mercy from God, saying he had had enough, and confessed that he was the one who killed the person. This time, Sato truly woke up. He had been lying there the whole time. Seeing the reporters surrounding him, Sato suddenly said that he was the killer and begged them to give him the death penalty. Sato got his wish and was sentenced by the law. He was brought to the execution chamber. But now, Sato felt no fear. Instead, a smile of relief spread across his face as he said he was finally free, and that death was a better alternative. The 40th story begins with a man who had a constantly stern and serious expression, which led his wife to frequently nag him not to look so grim, as it was hurting their shop's reputation. One day, while making a delivery, he saw someone fall from the sky, landing right on his delivery box. The man was so shocked that he fainted on the spot. When he woke up, a crowd had gathered. Strangely, instead of being sad, they were all happy. The man couldn't understand, wondering if these people had no sympathy. Someone was dead, and they were all standing around smiling. He drove off to continue his deliveries. On the way, he saw a family of 3 crying, but their emotions seemed to completely contradict their actions. When he arrived at his delivery destination, a funeral was in progress. The man noticed that every guest had a smile on their face. Even more bizarrely, he could hear loud bursts of laughter coming from the relatives inside the funeral hall. A family member of the deceased noticed the delivery man and came over to greet him with a smile. Seeing her, the man instinctively offered his condolences, but his sad expression made the woman furious. She berated him, asking what was so funny and telling him he was being disrespectful to the deceased at a funeral. The man was completely baffled by their reaction. He was clearly grieving, so why were they telling him to get lost? He felt something was very wrong and rushed home to tell his wife. But when he got home, he found his wife sitting in front of the TV, watching Daniel CC horror movies and sobbing her heart out. The man asked her what was wrong. His wife replied that the show was hilarious. The man was confused. Why was she crying if she was happy? The man's reaction baffled his wife, who wondered what was wrong with him and why he was so angry for no reason. They had an argument that went nowhere. Just then, their daughter came home. The man, tired from a long day, was happy to see her and broke into a heartfelt smile. When his wife saw this, she flew into a rage again, yelling at him for having such a deathly-looking smile upon seeing his own daughter. The man said he was happy. His wife retorted that if he was happy, he should be crying. Seeing them argue, their daughter tried to calm them down, saying she was getting very sad and then burst into loud laughter. The man was baffled again, but he also realized that he might have entered another world. That night, when the man went outside, he witnessed a car accident. Unsurprisingly, the onlookers were all laughing heartily, clearly heartbroken. But then, the man spotted some mysterious person in the crowd. His expressionless face showed a numbness to the situation. This mysterious person also noticed the man looking at him and turned to run, but he didn't get far before the man caught up to him. The man told him that they were in the same situation, that they were the same kind of people. Later, the two of them talked in a park. The mysterious person said he had been in this world for over a month. At first, he was as confused as the man, but now he had grown numb. He explained that this world was the same as theirs, except that the expressions for crying and laughing were reversed. People cried when they were happy and laughed when they were sad. The sadder they were, the louder they laughed, just as the man had seen at the funeral. Seeing the man's worries, the person comforted him using his muscles, telling him to just accept it. He said he was already starting to fit in, and then let out a loud laugh, a laugh filled with sorrow, helplessness, and a desire to leave. From then on, the man suppressed his expressions and continued to live. Apart from not crying or laughing, his life was not much different. Until one day, a few weeks later, his wife suddenly asked for a divorce. The reason was that the man was too gloomy and expressionless, never crying or laughing, which she found terrifying. She asked if he had a problem with her, but the man didn't answer. After that, the wife stopped asking and simply left with their daughter. Finally, the man had a breakdown and was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. One day, someone came to see him. It was the mysterious person. He said that this was the only place they could live normally without having to deceive themselves. After he spoke, they looked at each other and smiled. Then he asked the man if he had noticed anything strange that morning. His words made the man realize that something did feel off. They entered yet another world. It seemed to be a world where love and hate were reversed, because on the streets, family members and lovers were chasing and trying to kill each other. The story ends there. The 41st story begins on Parents' Day at school, where Ryota's father came to visit. Coincidentally, Ryota had written an essay about his father, and the teacher asked him to read it to the class. In his essay, Ryota wrote that if he had to give his dad a score, he would give him 100 points. Although his dad's eyes were small, he had a great relationship with his mom. They were always together, very affectionate. When his mom mentioned his dad's belly, his dad quit drinking. Every morning before school, he would see his dad kiss his mom, and his mom would kiss him back so much it almost made him sick. When his dad walked him to school, he would always encourage him to do his best. That's why he loved his dad so much. The essay ended there, but all of this was a lie, made up by Ryota. The situation at his home was not like that at all, and his father felt a deep sense of shame as he listened. On the way home, his father suddenly suggested they play catch, perhaps out of a guilty conscience and a desire to make up for his absent fatherhood. At the same time, at home, Ryota's mother was doing housework when she received a phone call. Her expression suddenly changed, and she whispered to the caller, asking why they had called on a Sunday when they had agreed not to. The man on the other end said he had forgotten his keys at her place yesterday. Just as Ryota returned home, the woman quickly hung up and repeatedly asked Ryota where his father was. When she heard he was at the park waiting to play catch with him, she seemed relieved. She then asked Ryota what his father's expression was when he heard the essay. Ryota replied that his dad was surprised, which puzzled the woman. Later at the park, Ryota and his father started playing catch. While catching the ball, the man suddenly noticed that his son seemed to throw much harder than before. But then he thought about it. He had been so busy with work that he hadn't played with his son in a long time. He couldn't even remember the last time they played catch. That evening, when Ryota and his father got home, the woman was still looking for the key, but with no luck. While searching, she lifted the blanket in a strange way, which her husband noticed. He assumed she had been secretly sleeping at home on Ryota's parents' day, and they started arguing. Ryota saw them. Later, while bathing with his father, Ryota suddenly asked him if he had a lover. His father asked him what kind of question that was. Ryota then asked about his mother. His father replied that his mother's lover was him. Ryota's words seemed to have a hidden meaning, and the woman, overhearing them, felt a pang of guilt. That night, the man noticed his son behaving strangely but didn't think much of it at the time. The next morning, the phone rang at home. The woman rushed to the phone but didn't pick it up immediately. Her son noticed this. She then asked her husband why he was surprised after hearing Ryota's essay. He replied it was because the essay said his parents had a great relationship. Just then, Ryota brought another essay for his father to read. The man was surprised again. Seeing Ryota was about to leave for school without eating breakfast, he immediately got up to go with him, remembering the line in his son's essay about saying "do your best" together at the railroad crossing. But before they left, the woman finally found the key. Her son had taken it. When father and son reached the railroad crossing, before the man could say "do your best," Ryota suddenly said to him that his mom was acting strange, as if she had a secret. After saying this, Ryota walked away, leaving his father standing there, lost in thought. That day, the man took the day off. He didn't go to work or go home. He just lay in the park. Meanwhile, at school, a man furtively approached Ryota's classroom. In his mind, he recalled Ryota's mother's words. The key was hanging on Ryota's school bag. It seems like he was a teacher at the school. Time flew by, and it was almost the end of the workday. The man was sitting by the fountain in the park, lost in thought, filled with sorrow. He just wanted to sit there. He didn't want to go home. But in the end, all his emotions melted into a single sigh. The story ends here. This short story is about a busy man who has neglected his family and whose relationship with his wife has likely deteriorated. His wife has started seeing someone else, possibly a teacher at Ryota's school. At first, the man didn't realize it, but his son's hints made him aware. But life has to go on, so all his anger, dissatisfaction, helplessness, and resentment can only be expressed in a single sigh. The 42nd story begins with Tomoko working at a manga studio. Her job was demanding, and she often worked for days on end without a break. As a result, she frequently had to cancel dates with her boyfriend. One day, her boyfriend finally had enough and broke up with Tomoko, saying he wanted someone who could accommodate his schedule. Tomoko felt this was something they should discuss in person. Her boyfriend then asked when they could meet, tonight or tomorrow. Tomoko thought for a moment and said in a few days, because she was swamped with work. The man then angrily hung up. Heartbroken, Tomoko was so busy with work that she couldn't even find the time to go and reason with her boyfriend. A few days later, Tomoko finally finished her project and returned home. The first thing she did was call her boyfriend's home, only to find out he was away on a business trip. Tomoko was frustrated and angry. She didn't want to be so busy. She wanted time, more freedom. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Tomoko curiously opened it to find no one there, just a large box wrapped in gift paper. Puzzled, she wondered who had sent her this gift. She dragged it inside and opened it to find a very large human-like doll. Tomoko's first thought was that it must be a prank. Looking closer, she saw the doll was soft and could be posed in many difficult positions. There was a card reader on its neck, labeling it a copy robot. Not knowing how it worked, Tomoko crouched down and thought for a while, realizing she might have misunderstood something. Angrily, she threw the robot back into the box. Then Tomoko sat back on the sofa, grumbling. She wished there really was such a thing as a copy robot. She could make a copy of herself and delegate all her work to it. Then she could break free from her busy life and enjoy more free time. As Tomoko finished speaking, something strange happened. The doll began to change. Before her shocked eyes, in just a few moments, it transformed into an exact replica of her. Tomoko was terrified by what she saw, but then she heard the doll speak to her. It said she wanted to rest, so it would go to work for her tomorrow and asked to borrow her clothes. Despite her shock, the next day Tomoko entrusted everything to the copy robot and began to enjoy her freedom. She started by sleeping in. With more leisure time, Tomoko began to venture out, immersing herself in nature and breathing the fresh air. Thinking back on her old life, she realized she had been too busy. This kind of life suited her better. Watching the couples pass by in the park, Tomoko told herself that when her boyfriend returned, she would have a good talk with him. She believed their relationship could improve. With more time, Tomoko was finally able to read the book she loved. With this came a flood of new and better ideas. She immediately shared these ideas with the copy robot. The robot told her not to worry, as it knew everything she was thinking, because it was her. Hearing this, for a split second, Tomoko felt a sense of being replaced. That evening, the anime featuring the copy robot's work for the week was broadcast. Tomoko watched it and gave it high praise. The work not only resembled her style, but in some places, it was even better than what she could do. Another week passed. Tomoko, used to being busy, suddenly found herself unaccustomed to the idleness. She couldn't stay at home and couldn't focus on her books. She decided to go shopping to pass the time, but found her bank card was restricted and couldn't be used. When she went to the bank to inquire, she was told that she herself had canceled the card. Tomoko immediately understood it must have been the copy robot. Without thinking further, she went straight to the manga studio to confront the copy robot. She told her colleagues that she was the real Tomoko, but they told her to get out, saying that just because she looked like Tomoko didn't mean she could stalk her. After that, whatever Tomoko tried to say was anticipated by her colleagues. It was clear the copy robot had planned all of this. Seeing her confident counterpart, Tomoko was furious. She thought that if she just pressed its copy card, it would revert to its original form. But when she tried, nothing happened. Tomoko then understood that this had been its plan from the beginning. Tomoko wanted to do something more, but her colleagues were already calling the police. She had no choice but to leave immediately. Wandering aimlessly on the street, Tomoko found herself outside her boyfriend's building. Seeing the lights on in his apartment, she happily rushed up. When she saw her boyfriend, Tomoko told him everything. He seemed skeptical and offered her a drink to calm her nerves. But to Tomoko's shock, the drink was glowing. Watching her boyfriend take a sip first, Tomoko realized that the person in front of her might not be her boyfriend anymore. She tried to resist drinking the beverage. In the struggle, she accidentally pushed him over and saw that his arm had broken off. He was indeed a copy robot. Just then, a man emerged, saying his plan was going smoothly and he hadn't expected them to fall for it so easily. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. The man opened the door to find two police officers. But these two looked anything but professional. They walked towards Tomoko with cheerful grins, clearly intending to take her away. No matter how much Tomoko explained or tried to prove she was the real Tomoko, it was useless. In their eyes, she had probably already become a fool. The 43rd story begins with a famous magician who was a nobody 3 years ago. Back then, he performed in a small bar, a job he owed entirely to the kindness of the star dancer. But the magician's magic was dull. He only ever pulled rabbits out of a hat. Once or twice was fine, but after dozens of times, customers started to leave as soon as they saw him. The owner couldn't take it anymore and issued an ultimatum. If the magician pulled out another rabbit that night, he was fired. The magician didn't know about this. But that night, he couldn't even produce a rabbit. His magician's pocket was empty. The atmosphere was incredibly awkward. After a moment, the audience started booing him off the stage, chanting the star dancer's name. Then something bizarre happened. The star dancer, who was having a meal, was suddenly pulled out of his pocket. Everyone was stunned. The delayed applause made the magician an overnight sensation. His fame grew, and his performances were no longer limited to the bar. He began performing in nursing homes, amusement parks, and other larger venues. As he gained more experience, the magician discovered the secret behind his miraculous pocket. The things he produced didn't appear out of thin air. When something came out of his pocket, it disappeared from somewhere else in the world. Also, he couldn't request specific items. The magic only worked when he was on stage, and only when the audience had a strong desire for something, born out of a desperate situation like when he couldn't produce the rabbit. The magician called this phenomenon miracles in times of desperation. The name was catchy, and the things he produced were varied, but none of them were what the magician truly wanted. But one day, an audience member asked if he could produce money. This was a request he had also dreamed of. The magician pretended not to hear, saying the voice was too soft and asking them to speak up. The audience grew impatient and started shouting in unison for him to produce money. The magician kept asking them to repeat it, wanting to build up the effect. He believed that the stronger the audience's desire, the more money he might be able to produce. Although he had never tried it, reality matched his guess. The money he had dreamed of finally appeared, and it came out in stacks. After the show, the magician rushed home and continued to pull out stack after stack of cash. He neatly arranged the bills in front of him, filling the room. He did this for a long time until no more money would come out. Unknowingly, the magician had fallen asleep. When he woke up, it was morning. He was shocked to see the room filled with money. He quickly lit a cigarette to calm his nerves and turned on the TV. He heard a news report that a bank had been robbed of $1 billion the previous night. Seeing this, the magician finally relaxed and smiled. He knew the money was real, but he couldn't spend it yet. He had to wait for the statute of limitations to pass. Then it would truly be his. With this money, he thought he could live a very comfortable old age. That night, the magician found a secluded spot and buried the money with the NZ letters. He then continued his magic tour. The magician's fame grew because of his magician's pocket, and his influence spread. 3 years passed. Even with his considerable influence, he hadn't earned this much money in 3 years. Today was the last show of his tour and the last of his magic career. In just 12 hours, the statute of limitations on the money would expire. After tonight, he would be a billionaire. With all that money, why would he continue doing magic? But that night, when he asked for requests as usual, something went wrong. An old detective came on stage. He was the detective in charge of the $1 billion case 3 years ago. For 3 years, despite their investigations, they had found no evidence leading to the culprit or the whereabouts of the money. So now, if the magician was truly as omnipotent as people said, the old detective hoped he could produce the money that went missing 3 years ago. After the detective spoke, the magician felt awkward and guilty. If he really produced the money, he would be poor again. So he hesitated and said nothing. Seeing his reaction, the detective felt his request might have been too abrupt. He apologized to the magician and prepared to leave the stage. But just then, the audience started chanting 1 billion. As more people joined in, the chanting grew louder. The magician panicked. This was no longer the small venue from 3 years ago. With greater influence came a bigger stage and a larger audience. The magician instinctively covered his pocket, as if trying to hold back the restless money inside. But it was futile. The next moment, the money burst out before his shocked and unwilling eyes. Seeing this, the audience cheered even louder, and the money came out even faster. The old detective caught a bill and saw the NZ letters. A knowing smile appeared on his face. He then looked at the magician with a sharp gaze and walked towards him. The magician instinctively backed away. He then heard the detective say to him that he was the world's greatest magician. The 3-year-old case of the missing billion was solved. But the detective didn't reveal his suspicions about the magician's involvement, perhaps because he knew he had no evidence. It seemed the magician would have to postpone his retirement. The 44th story begins when Akiko was a child. Her father took her to the top of a mountain and told her to take a good look at their village because it would soon be submerged under a lake. Many years passed, and just as Akiko was about to forget about that day, she began to have strange dreams about the village where she was born and raised, the one that now lay at the bottom of a lake. But she didn't pay much attention to it. One afternoon, Akiko's boyfriend met her and broke up with her. Akiko was very calm about it. She didn't ask why, didn't try to win him back, and didn't cry. In her eyes, she was past the age of crying over lost love. But now, she was alone again. While cooking, Akiko started talking to herself. When she realized what she was doing, she knew she must have inherited her mother's bad habit. Akiko's mother died young. When Akiko was still a child, her father brought home a stepmother. But Akiko disliked her and never called her mom. Lost in thought, the doorbell rang. She opened the door to find a little boy. She had seen him before at the supermarket. She thought he might be a lost child. But before she could ask, the boy kept saying he was hungry and wanted to come in and eat. The kind-hearted Akiko didn't refuse. She figured she could help him find his mother after he had eaten. But after they ate, and while Akiko was on the phone, the boy magically disappeared. The call was from her father, asking if she was coming home for the new year. Akiko declined, saying she was going on a trip with friends. This was a lie. She wasn't going on a trip, she just didn't want to go home. Ever since her father brought home her stepmother, she had disliked that house. Although her stepmother was gone now in her memory, the small village where she was born and raised was her true home. But that was gone too. During the holidays, staying at home all the time wasn't an option, so Akiko went to the movies. Although she felt a little down seeing all the happy couples, she suddenly noticed a small hand stealing her snacks. It was the boy who had magically disappeared. Akiko smiled. She asked him if he was alone, and the boy nodded. She asked about his parents, but he remained silent. So Akiko stopped asking and gave him all her popcorn. Perhaps he reminded her of her younger self, the girl who had a home but couldn't go back to it. After meeting the boy, Akiko smiled more. Her friend even thought she had a new boyfriend. When she told her he was a little boy about 8 years old, she was surprised. That night, as she was about to head home with her friend, she saw him again. But for some reason, her friend couldn't see him. Akiko didn't think much of it at the time, but when she got home, she remembered something from her childhood. Back then, an 8-year-old boy had appeared in her house. Akiko had asked her parents why they didn't invite him to eat. Her parents replied that he was fine because he was protecting their home, and that he was a home-protecting spirit. It was only then that Akiko realized that this boy, who had mysteriously appeared and disappeared before her, whom only she could see, was the spirit she had met as a child, the one who had always protected their home. After her shower, as Akiko was about to have a drink, the boy appeared again. Akiko was startled at first, then overjoyed. She immediately asked if he was the home-protecting spirit. The boy nodded. They both smiled. Suddenly, a memory from her childhood flooded back. After her mother had just passed away, this boy had stayed with her every day. She remembered asking him what he would do when the village was flooded. The boy said he wasn't going anywhere. His home would sink to the bottom of the lake. Akiko remembered everything. She hugged the boy and cried with joy. The next day, she took him to an amusement park. They rode the roller coaster and the carousel. For lunch, she treated him to lots of delicious food. In the afternoon, she took him to a children's clothing store. But when she was measuring him for clothes, it looked incredibly strange to others. Although Akiko, completely focused on the boy, didn't notice, the boy saw everything. The looks they got were just like the ones the villagers used to give her mother when she talked to herself. So the boy felt it was time for him to leave. But when he told Akiko, she became upset. She wanted to keep him with her. She didn't want to be alone again. The boy told her that her father was also alone and urged her to go home and see him. He said he would always be in the village, and if she ever felt lonely, she could come and find him there. Although Akiko pleaded with him to stay, the boy slowly faded from her sight. After he was gone, Akiko broke down and cried. Her wish was simple. She just wanted a home she could return to, a home that would welcome her warmly, a home that would embrace her. The next day, Akiko listened to the boy's advice and took a train back to her hometown. As she set foot on her hometown soil, she was filled with emotion. She hadn't been back in a long time, not since she started working. Everything seemed the same, yet different. At least her father, once a dashing and flirtatious man, was different. Now he was gray-haired and stooped. The moment she saw him, all her anger dissipated. Later, the father and daughter went to see the submerged village, to see the spirit who was still guarding it. As a children's song began to play, the story comes to an end. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.